सलाम पाकिस्तान। मैं हूं इफ्तिखार फिरदौस और आप देख रहे हैं बॉर्डर टॉक्स। नाजरीन, सोशल मीडिया के अंदर हमने एक ट्रेंड जो है वो देखा, जिसमें मैसिव रिक्रूटमेंट ड्राइव्स जो है वो दहशतगर्द तंजीमें जो है अब इस्तेमाल करती हैं और ख़ुसूसी तौर पर ऐसे नैरेटिव्स के अंदर जो है वो उनको कैश करने की कोशिश करती है फेक न्यूज़ के ज़रिए, और ऐसे प्रोपेगेंडा बनाने की जो है वो कोशिश करती है जो यूथ को पर्टिकुलरली जो है वो अट्रैक्ट करें। इसके अलावा इस फेयर के अंदर जो है हमने देखा है कि टेक्नोलॉजी का बहुत ज़्यादा इस्तेमाल हो गया। हमने देखा कि एआई अब इस्तेमाल होता है, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, जो डिटेक्शन के लिए जो है वेरियस प्लेटफॉर्म्स किस तरह कंटेंट ब्लॉक करती हैं, उसको एल्गोरिदम्स को चेंज करने के लिए क्या क्या तरीक़ाकार जो है वो इख्तियार करते हैं ऐसे ग्रुप्स। और पर्टिकुलरली ऑनलाइन स्फीयर के अंदर ऐसे वीडियोज़ और ऐसा कंटेंट जो है वो बनाया जाता है जिसके ज़रिए इसको असल हकीकत में लेकर आने के लिए भी रिक्रूटमेंट का ज़रिया जो है वो इस्तेमाल होता है। उसकी एक एग्जांपल जो है वो पर्टिकुलरली ड्रोन अटैक्स हैं, ड्रोन स्ट्राइक्स हैं जो नॉन स्टेट एक्टर्स के हाथों में आ गए हैं। और साउथ ऑफ खैबर पख्तूनख्वा जो जनूबी अजला हैं वहाँ पे पहले हम देखते हैं कि इस टैक्टिक को जो है ये ग्रुप्स अपनाते हैं। तो इन सब को डिस्कस करने के लिए आज हमने मदऊ किया है वाले रिकार्डो को, जो हमें वेनिस इटली से जो है वो ज्वाइन करते हैं। रिसर्चर हैं, स्कॉलर हैं और इन चीज़ों पर काफ़ी गहरी नज़र रखते हैं। थैंक यू वेरी मच वाले फॉर गिविंग अस टाइम टुडे। I just want to jump straight into the topic. Propaganda networks, the way that they've been developing. We've been having multiple guests on this platform, and today the reason for calling you was because you have a deep insight in terms of how these propaganda networks function. My question to you is that there are alternate realities that are being created and alternate narratives by these groups, terrorist entities across the globe. But when we look at the complexity of it, on how one terrorist network is actually collaborating with another terrorist network on these platforms, I need your insights in terms of that. Why is it nearly impossible to stop it completely?
Yes, Iftikhar Sab. So I would say that the major obstacle for tackling how these groups, and we can talk mostly about the Islamic State usually, but this of course involve a plethora of different militant groups, including those in Afghanistan, Pakistan region. The main obstacle is the fact that these groups have in time developed skills and capabilities that allows them to shift from one platform to the other whenever there is a crackdown from a certain platform to within their own online environment. And being this the first major obstacle, the second major obstacle connected to the first one is the fact that most of the time these social media platforms and the owners, they do not actively collaborate, not only with governments. To some extent, there are Meta and other groups, as we will see, like they have been trying to cooperate in the last few years, but they have very limited cooperation with governments, and specifically, they have limited cooperation among these major social media and messaging application platforms. So these prevent the organization of a long-term strategy in order to tackle these spaces, these online spaces that leads to either radicalization or to cooperation between militants in order for them to then frame major plots and attacks.
But yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. But in terms of how technology in the last couple of years has plummeted and spread over across this entire spectrum of counterterrorism, but how these groups are evolving, they seem to be always ahead of state practices, a few steps ahead. Does that actually show that there are a lot of tech-savvy people within these groups?
Definitely. We witnessed how all the administrators or the organizers, those users who set up these accounts, whether it is on, and we can discuss more in detail, about this platform, whether they are Telegram, whether they are Rocket Chat or Element or even Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, we see that those in charge of moderating and organizing these online spaces, they are they are completely aware of the risks that these platforms can pose to the security and the identity of the users, and specifically of their own militants. And they are extremely aware of the fact that some of these platforms are actively collaborating with security forces from other countries. So not only they do provide guidelines on how to avoid detection, on how to avoid getting trapped by security forces on secure accounts, and to migrate effectively from one social media platforms to another whenever there is the need.
So my question then is that, I mean, in terms of how technologies have actually evolved over this space in this time, we've seen that not just on the online sphere, but we've seen them also coming into the physical sphere as well. And drones are one of those, those devices that have now been activated into the region. We've seen them being used by non-state actors in the Middle East. We've seen them being used in Africa as well. But over the last 1.5 years, we've seen this phenomenon grow within the Pakistan-Afghanistan sphere. I want to just ask you a little bit of a history in terms of which group initially had the idea on how to actually use UAVs.
So I would say that most recently, the two are the major groups that have been using drones as an effective weapons for their own activities within the context of the Afghanistan-Pakistan region. And these two groups are both related to the Pakistani Taliban. One is the TTP, of course, and the other one is the newly born IMP in Ittihad in Pakistan. So we saw how gradually the TTP shifted from using drones from reconnaissance and for more simply for recording battle scenes and for the production of media content. So what we saw also for other groups in the region, we can think about Jaish al-Adl, who started to do that in between 2022 and 2023. And they gradually developed the use of drones from merely these more simple tasks to actual fighting.
But Wale, just to intercede, we've seen that this was a phenomenon that was originally developed by Al-Qaeda as an operational tactic. So historically, I mean, they would have the understanding on how this warfare works, and Al-Qaeda seems to have completely disappeared off limits from this entire spectrum. Hardly anybody talks about it, but the rejuvenation of some of these groups that have had historical linkages and then became dormant and now reactivated again clearly shows that obviously there are other factors rather than just local phenomenons involved in all of this.
Exactly, and this comes to the second group, to IMP, which there are a lot of indicators that behind this group there are segments or former members or active members of Al-Qaeda in Pakistan, at least in the expertise and tech department. And definitely the use of drones that we have been witnessing from IMP, which, just to recall, is a platform that is mostly formed by Hafiz's Bahadur group, that is a group that usually did not employ the tactics of drone warfare. Recently, IMP, after the merger of Hafiz's Bahadur group and the Inqilab Islami Pakistan group, which is again suspected of being a branch or a sub-branch of active or former Al-Qaeda members. I mean, after this merger, we have been seeing Hafiz's Bahadur group actively using drones for kinetic operations. And this suggests that this is an expertise that has been shifting from one theater mainly in Afghanistan.
So it's time for a little break, but we'll come back and talk to you about this in more detail. ना छोटे से ब्रेक का टाइम हुआ है, लेकिन हम वापस आकर जो है इसी डिस्कशन को कंटिन्यू रखते हैं, पर्टिकुलरली ड्रोन वॉरफेयर के हवाले से जो अब हमें देखने में आई है, जो खैबर पख्तूनख्वा की जनूबी अजला है, पर्टिकुलरली उसके लिहाज से हमारे साथ रहिए। Welcome back, Nazreen. While continuing the discussion in terms of open source intelligence, while states have benefited from that tremendously for surveillance as well as to keep a check in terms of what citizens are doing or non-state actors are up to, but simultaneously we do see this trend also being used by non-state actors. Also, we've seen that in order to avoid being spotted, they've now been using cover of mainstream media organizations or either pretending to use AI to create sub-identities through which they operate.
Yeah, so militant organizations in the online sphere have adopted and developed new tactics to avoid detection and to avoid that their own social media environment are completely disrupted by the intervention of either major media companies or by states. So there are a number of tactics that these individuals usually use. One of the most successful one has been employing distorting, let's say, keywords that can trigger automatic detection from softwares of the companies, of the media companies, social media platforms, and Telegram. And messaging apps. For instance, Telegram and Facebook have been adopting quite effectively these auto detection and have been disrupting Telegram channels and social media platforms. However, at the same time, militant organizations have started to distorting these keywords with punctuation symbols or numbers or other stuff, which can effectively prevent the detection of these channels and groups. And the same goes with the adoption of pictures that do not resemble the militancy related content. So for instance, children or flowers or other stuff, including mimicking the logos of major media companies from the West or from local environments. And this is one of the major threats that is posed by these militants. That is that in order to actively cracking down on them and their online spaces, there is the need for a human intervention. Human intervention is vital, and actively monitoring from humans and people who have been trained in knowing how to detect these social media accounts or users on Telegram and other platforms. There is a need for them, because otherwise these militants have been developing such skills that it is very difficult to assess whether one user, one account on Instagram or Facebook is a supporter of a militant group or just simply some common user who is reporting news from the media, for instance. That is another very common tactic, which also can help them in fueling conspiracy theories and fake news by sharing apparently innocent pieces of news, distorting them, and hence avoiding being detected as actively supportive of the Islamic State, for instance, which is one of the most common practice employed by such.
But we've seen local groups from Pakistan and Afghanistan also adopting the same technology. I just wanted to ask you one last question, Wale, and I need a little detailed answer on that. In terms of what are the current trends that we see, what kind of themes are there that have been activated within the sphere for recruitment purposes, particularly aimed at the younger generation?
So it really depends on which group we are trying to...
a general assessment in terms of what it would be.
Yes, in general, the younger generations in Pakistan and in general, they are very exposed to certain key narratives that have been recurrent, whatever the group is, whether it is Islamic State or Pakistani Taliban, and that is the delegitimization of the Pakistani state in particular. And there are a number of topics which these groups like to focus on, which is international relations and the role of Pakistan or another country within the international community and its linkages, particularly with Western countries, of course. And then there is the role of religion within society and politics and the legal framework of the country, which is one of the most debated topics among users. However, for younger generations specifically, another key topic which is always recurrent is the socio-economic issues. So perceived injustice and perceived economic dissatisfaction, whether it is factual or perceived, is one of the major topics that is constantly debated and regurgitated by the media outlets of such militant groups. And it has been discussed under different lenses, whether it is through videos or podcasts in the form of rabid propaganda or as a discussion between so-called experts, economic or social media experts of militant groups. So it really depends on how the group is trying to address these issues.
थैंक यू वेरी मच वाले फॉर द डिटेल्ड आंसर्स। नाजरीन, गुफ्तगू वो आपने सुनी और वाले रिकार्डो जो इन टॉपिक्स पर काफ़ी गहरी नज़र रखते हैं, उनके मुताबिक जो की ट्रेंड्स इस टाइम पर पर्टिकुलरली नौजवानान के रिक्रूटमेंट के लिए जो है वो नज़र आती है, ताकि वो इन ग्रुप्स में जो है वो शमूलियत इख्तियार करें या उनकी व्यूज़ जो है वो अडॉप्ट करें, उसमें गवर्नेंस सिस्टम्स, इकनॉमिक इशूज़, फॉरेन रिलेशंस और जो पर्टिकुलरली जस्टिस या जुडिशल सिस्टम है उसके मार्कर्स जो है वो की नज़र आते हैं और उन्हीं के नैरेटिव्स के ऊपर खेल कर एक ऐसा नैरेटिव बनाया जाता है कि जो गवर्नमेंट को और स्टेट को जो है वो डीलेजिटिमाइज करता है। और यही की ट्रेंड्स नज़र आते हैं लोकली भी और ग्लोबली भी, लेकिन खुसूसी तौर पर पाकिस्तान के अंदर जहाँ पर यूथ की पॉपुलेशन जो है वो कंसिडरेबली ओल्ड एज पॉपुलेशन से ज़्यादा, ये नैरेटिव्स डीपली जो है वो स्टेट के फंक्शनैलिटी को भी अफेक्ट करते हैं और यूथ के इंगेजमेंट को कि किस तरह स्टेट उनके साथ इंटरेक्ट करे उसको भी अफेक्ट करते हैं। प्रोग्राम्स में